Is there any particular point in training where you were ready to call it? It was, I'm done.
During selection and training, during the Special Forces assessment selection process, I was so we stayed in these barracks, right? So everybody stayed in these like confined barracks, and I went in February. It was very cold in North Carolina during that time, and if one person gets sick in the bay, everybody else gets sick in the bay. It's just that's the way it is. Well, we had one guy get sick, and I caught a flu, and we were doing land navigation that night. So we're doing the map and compass. They're teaching us how to dead reckon. They're teaching us terrain, orientation. So advanced land navigation training. It's not like a basic land navigation training because we had to pass through what's called the STAR exam, which is one of the hardest land navigation course in the United States Army. So during that time, man, I was coming down with the flu, right? I had, gosh, man, I had a high temperature over 100, and I was cold. I was breaking out in sweat, and I really wanted to quit. I really wanted to quit that night. Well, I told you my uncle is special forces,
Hmm.
and he was the commander of the SWIC assessment and selection during that time frame that I went through. It was his last class before he took over Just Mag Thai. So this was his last class before he takes over a different command. He was in charge of the whole thing. Before I went through, I said, "Hey, look, I don't want any, I know that we're family members and, I don't want any hand-me-outs, don't look after me." He goes, "Oh, you don't have to worry." He goes, "If you don't have it, you don't have it."
Yeah.
So I wanted to quit. So at night, I wanted to quit so bad, man. Right. And I remember it was thundering out, lightning outside. It was raining really hard. I was feeling sorry for myself. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. After 10, just after got ran down to the ground during that day of, assessment and selection. And at night is when we go into our academics, so we're just messed up. And I wanted to quit. And I remember the NCOIC said, "On your feet." And the lights shut off. Boom. So I'm like, oh God, So I got up and my uncle walked across to the stage. It wasn't planned because we talked about it later. He goes, "Oh, I was just paying a visit," right? But he walked up to the stage and the lights turned back on. Everybody's on their feet. You're full bird colonel standing there. And he said a speech that I'll never forget, man. "Walk or die" was the speech. And he talked about Cabana Tawan, about when we were engaged in the in combat against the Japanese in the islands of the Philippines, how the Americans and the Filipino soldiers were captured and forced to march the Bataan Death March. And if one of the soldiers would fall back past hand-touching distance, then the Japanese soldiers will pull them, rip their ID tag, and shoot them where where they're
Mm.
taking a knee. The Bataan Death March. So he was talking about the Bataan Death March. And he said to the general, there was, gosh, man, I would say there was at least 400 candidates out there. We graduated with 70. So 400 candidates. He's looking across. He didn't even see me. He's looking across and he said, "March or die. When you want to quit, you walk until you die." Right? This is It's not if you want it or not. If you want it, you're willing to die for it, And he talked about the Bataan Death March. And I'm like, I'm gonna die here tonight. I'm gonna die here because I'm not gonna quit now. I'm not that moment came. Let me tell you how toxic that is. I'm talking to the viewers because you understand. If you want to quit and you actually go through with quitting, you establish that.
Yeah.
You can never ever go back from that again. You quit once, you're going to quit again. You quit again, it becomes a norm, right? So I knew at that moment, if I quit, I would never go through this training. I would never make it, So I was willing to die that night. So that night, after land navigation, we we went to go eat our breakfast right after all the training, and there was one guy who smuggled a Motrin, 800 milligram. That he had to smuggle it in, right?
Yeah.
And I was part of his team, and he said, "Hey, Tu, what's going on?" And I said, "Can I have that Motrin, please?" And he gave it to me. Right, that's like Ranger candy. He
Hell yeah, it
gave me
is.
that Motrin, right? And it broke my flu, man. It broke the flu, and then I was able to continue on with training and graduate. You know.
Did you ever feel any, I mean, do you think that the fact that your stepdad was a Green Beret, your uncle was a Green Beret, sounds like he had a lot of inspiration and you know, do you want to be a fucking commando? Was there any fear of letting them down?
Oh yeah.
And
Even to this day.
even to this day.
Even to this day. I think about them all the time. Both of them. Even to this day.
That's part of what, that is what got me through training is it got to the point where I didn't care about myself anymore. It was just the fact that I just didn't want to let my old man down.
Mhm.
And that's kind of, I did not want to make that call saying, "Hey dad, I fucking quit." So I was just curious.
There was one time in Ranger school, we had to airborne infiltration to Fort Benning, Georgia, and it was an 18-mile force march. When I say force march, they're running at that running pace, and you have, combat load and weapons on you. So we had to airborne infiltrate in Fort Benning. We form a forced road march, basic formation, and we start humping it for 18 miles very fast. And during that time, man, I was 19 years old. I don't know how to be a soldier, right? So I'm like, what is a better way to break in a new pair of boots than to road march it in, right? Didn't think.
Yeah.
All right. So we airborne dropped in that morning, and we set up for their forced road march, and they started running. Guys were dropping like flies, right? Guys were quitting. And somehow I held on, man. I basically light trot behind people, and we made this turn into Darby, right? So Darby was a long dirt trail road. It went into Darby phase of training, which is small unit tactics, raids, ambushes. And man, I'll tell you, Shawn, like I had no skin on the back of my foot, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I had blisters throughout all of Ranger School, all the way down to Florida phase, from that road march. I was suffering from heat exhaustion. Like I could feel my body shutting down where I'm falling asleep walking. Like, like you're heated, like you're about to die. And I was falling behind on the road march. As soon as we turned, man, I only had 1,000 meters left on this road march.
Yeah.
And I was contemplating on quitting. That's how painful it was. But somehow I just put one foot in front of the other, and then the instructor came up behind me. He said, if you fall one more step behind the pack, I'm going to pull you from training. And there's no lie. This is what I did. I punched myself in the face. And I continued to punch myself in the face because I was falling asleep walking, And so that was the only way that I could stay awake. So I punched myself in the face. My nose bleeding, kept on punching myself in the face. And this is what the Ranger instructor said: drive on. Yeah, man. So obviously, if the training is hard, that mindset is normal to want to quit. It's just, what do you do? What do you do when that moment of struggle? Do you want to be a commando?
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're looking for. They want to see who's gonna fucking switch it on when the going gets tough,
Yeah.
and the going gets tough real fast in
Yeah.
those outfits.